All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of What's What BR. Today we have a new guest. We have Chris Meyer with us. Chris, how are you, man?
I'm great. Good to see you, Brandon.
I appreciate you making some time for me today. You are at New Schools for Baton Rouge. Is that correct? And can you give us a little bit about what you do there and kind of what a normal day might look like for you over there?
Yeah, well, nothing normal in the education world, unfortunately. But started New Schools for Baton Rouge about 10 years ago, with a focus on trying to grow the number of high quality school options in Baton Rouge. And what we do really at its core is we help to attract and grow proven high performing schools so that we can expand the number of options available to families, high quality options available to families here in the city.
Okay. And so how is that, you said 10 years ago you started this. What is it for, this is primarily, charter schools, right? I try to, I know a little bit about this. I'm trying to picture the guy who doesn't know anything whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like we still find, even on our parenting publications that we have, we're still every year having to kind of educate people on there are other options than just public and private. People don't always get that.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, charter schools are another version of a public school. The difference is that at a charter school, parents get to choose that school, so it's not based on where you live or how much money you make. Any child is able to apply to any charter school they want. And charter schools, as a public school, what's unique about them is that they're governed actually by a nonprofit board, so a local nonprofit community board. And typically charter schools, because they're independently governed, those schools are able, I think, to drive resources and kind of a response to the needs of kids in a much more streamlined and direct fashion than sometimes a traditional public school might, or that a magnet school might. These schools, I think, can just be more responsive to the individual needs of kids in their schools. And so it's really kind of a beautiful mix in that these are schools of choice, both for educators and for students and families.
So this is for, like I said, we're kind of taking it basically to the ground level for anybody who doesn't know. Charter schools, we have them here already. You're driving past them, people, they just may not realize that that's a charter school. Like Basis, I believe, is one of the charter schools that's opening up. What is it? You got a number of them here in town that have just kind of been. How long has it been? 10 years we've had the charter schools? Or was it 10 years ago you said, hey, we need to have some of the charter schools, and so you formed this?
Yeah, so we've actually had charter schools in Baton Rouge for over 20 years. Some of the first and oldest charter schools in the state were actually founded here in the city. CSAL Madison Prep is a great example. J.K. Haynes is another one. There were other charter schools like Children's Charter that is no longer in existence, but there have been charter schools before. I think what we've lacked is a number of high quality charter schools that have been able to persist over time. And so what we found, when we started in 2012, 90% of kids living in North Baton Rouge had no school option within their attendance zone but a D or F rated school. And so if you're a child or a family living in North Baton Rouge, your options were pretty slim unless you could either test into a magnet school and oh, by the way, figure out how to apply and get through the magnet school process, or figure out how to get into a private school. And so again, we saw charter schools, especially ones that had really great track records wherever they existed. We saw an opportunity to help those schools grow to kind of meet the demands and needs of families. And so you've really seen a hyper expansion of these schools in the last probably 5 to 6 years as we recruited schools, as we identified them across the country, and then we helped them set up here in Baton Rouge. And now today, the charter schools that we support are the fastest growing schools, both in terms of enrollment demand and in terms of academic performance of any school type in the city. So today we've got over 10,000 students attending schools we helped start. Most of these have started in the last 5 or 6 years. And the academic growth of these schools is outpacing magnet schools or traditional public schools. And so families have been really, really satisfied, high satisfaction rates. They're staying in these schools, and word of mouth is really, sort of exploding the growth and demand for these types of models. So it's basically telling us, what we're doing is having an impact of giving families a better option than they previously had.
And this obviously, like you said, this is not something brand new just to Baton Rouge. This is people across the country doing this. I think even we've got some publications down in New Orleans. Like New Orleans is all charter schools.
Yeah, that's right.
Charter
that's
or
right.
private. So it's not we're breaking ground or blazing trails. We're just starting to really get some traction. It sounds like here.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think across the country, public charter schools are an option, especially for educators that have always wanted to have sort of the ability to run their own school or to really focus on something unique and innovative, and to build a team around them that's not controlled by a central office. A lot of times, sort of big school systems, they decide who's hired and fired at different schools. This really puts the power at the local school level between those educators and those families. I'd say the unique thing though about Baton Rouge is that we don't want just any charter school. We're looking for charter schools that have really great track records of performance with kids, because at the end of the day, if a school is not performing, we don't think it needs to be in the mix of school options in our community. We really, unfortunately, have far too many underperforming schools that increasingly are losing enrollment, or leaving these buildings really unutilized, and not sort of adding a kind of quality mix to the city. So we ultimately at New Schools, while most of the schools we work with are public charter schools, we want to support any great school that has great results to expand and serve more families. So that includes, magnet schools that have wait lists. We've tried for years to work with previous superintendents to see if we couldn't help them expand schools that were working and that were in demand. And it's only been recently that I think we've found some kindredness to begin partnering formally with the school system on some of this work. So we're indifferent at the end of the day. We just want great schools for every family in the city.
There you go. And I think you mentioned, you want good charter schools,
Yeah.
Because, there are some bad actors out there, right? They're in some of these other markets. And so is that where you guys kind of are able to kind of that vetting, like you said, you're not going to go just anybody who walks in and says, we want a charter school. We found some dirt, we're going to go do it. It's, that, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, I wouldn't even say it's, really even bad actors. I think, there's people with good intentions that just aren't able to run a school well. I mean, let's take football coaches. I mean, not all are able to sort of put the right ingredients together to have an effective program. And so I think in this case, we really are looking for schools that have a long track record, that is successful, that really, works with students that resemble the kind of needs and in unique demographics we've got here in Baton Rouge. And so we've got schools of all types that we try to attract and put into a sort of canopy of options for families. And so we pay a lot of attention to what we hear families and other community organizations say in terms of what they're looking for, and I think really kind of elevating both not just a better school academically, but more diverse options for families. But yeah, that's where we stand in. We're a nonprofit that tries to raise resources to help those schools in their early startup days. Because it takes a lot of resources to start a new school. You've got to, begin to put boots on the ground to talk to families, build trust. You've got to figure out where the school is actually going to locate. You've got to hire a staff typically before you get any of the sort of public dollars that follow kids to the schools they go to. And so we sort of stand in that gap of both a quality control and an enabler of those schools getting started and growing in the city. And then, like I said, we've just been really blown away by, the type of schools we've landed here in Baton Rouge. If we put that on a the way maybe a chamber of commerce might attract, Fortune 500 companies. We've attracted some of the top performing charter schools in America, and not just charter schools, some of the best ranked in US News and World Report or the Washington Post Best Schools in America list. We've got several that rank in the very top of those rankings year in and year out. And now they're doing work and beginning to open and grow their schools here in Baton Rouge.
And I can only imagine it's not a quick process, right? Like you talk about, equate it to the chamber, courting, a big, it took us how long to get Amazon here? At the end of the day, this is real processes, right? To where you've got, you've identified, this group knows how to make the sauce. They've got it together. They can make the gumbo, but now we've got to, because they're businesses at the same time. It's not just education. It's not just, state money. They're having to kind of come in and, like you said, put their money up and invest in our community. And is that kind of where, that's kind of where you guys fit, like, hey, waving a flag, come look at Baton Rouge. We've got good dirt and good people, and, we want you here.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, these are, you take, I'll give you two quick examples. I mean, KIPP, which this community tried to attract 20 years ago, it was actually turned down by the school board at the time. And the leader of KIPP at the time then took the school to Helena, Arkansas, and created KIPP Delta, which runs some of the highest performing schools in the state of Arkansas. And they now have schools into Mississippi. And so we lost that opportunity 20 years ago. We finally, the school board now has approved KIPP, and KIPP will be opening this fall at Capitol High School in North Baton Rouge 20 years later. And so that took us trying to, reacclimate KIPP to Baton Rouge, trying to, frankly, atone for our past, transgressions. Another is a group called Great Hearts. Great Hearts is a classical liberal arts school that was started in Arizona about 25 years ago, about the same time Basis was started. And it's funny, those two schools, Basis and Great Hearts, are, sort of friendly competitors, that they're very different types of schools in terms of their curricular offerings. But both, if you see them in Arizona, and Arizona was a place where a lot of charter schools were created because the conditions were right. They really empowered educators and communities to form these new schools, which is really how schools in America started, 200 years ago. Like it really was the community coming together and realizing we've got to prepare our next generation. And so we collectively will band together and create this, the educators with the families. And that's what charters are. And so Great Hearts, we've been pursuing for 10 years. I mean, since we started, that was one of our first phone calls. And at the same time, they're getting calls from governors and mayors and chambers and foundations in, Florida and Colorado, et cetera. So they've opened in Texas and had a lot of success in San Antonio and Austin and Dallas, Fort Worth. And now finally they'll be opening their first school here in Baton Rouge in fall of 2023. So we're super excited that we're a little more than a year away from their first school in Louisiana. But it took us a decade to sort of outcompete those other states about why Baton Rouge was the right opportunity for them and why our community, we think, will thrive with them in the mix.
Do you see, I don't know anything about running a school, and don't ever ask me to, but I feel like I know, it could, I like talking to people who run schools. I do that very well. Yeah. I can keep up with conversation, but I think I can do a little bit of business, but it would seem, I don't have the graph, but you mentioned, we've got 10,000 kids. It would seem like, not that by any means do I say it gets easier for you, but it kind of would seem like it starts to get a little bit easier. Like when you had 2,000 kids at one point, in charter, and it's like, hey, here's our growth, here people are like, well, people really aren't adopting, but now it's almost, you kind of get to that tipping point where it's like, hey, we do have the data. We do have, I'll use an analogy. I saw somebody, saw a video. I thought it was funny. He was talking about, he was doing like some stock analysis, for this billionaire. And the billionaire was like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm doing an analysis on the stock. He goes, look, if it goes up and to the right, it's good and keeps making money. If it goes down, and to the right, it's not good. He's like, you don't need to overanalyze this. It's pretty simple. up and to the right is what we want.
Yeah.
Is that what we're seeing kind of like in the charter school world, to where when you make that call now, people are like, yeah, we've heard Baton Rouge, the community, let's talk. Is a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I think it goes both ways, right? I mean, I think from a national standpoint, Baton Rouge is seen as one of these places that is probably a top 5 city if you want to grow a public charter school. I think we've been very intentional about not allowing and not having kind of one charter school for all. Again, I think the beauty of charter schools is that each can be really innovative. I mean, we've got a Helix Aviation Academy sitting at the airport campus. I mean, here's a school that is training, future aviators and those that are going to work in the aviation industry. And that's something that, had we left to a central office bureaucrat, no, not trying to be pejorative there, but like, it's not going to be somebody's creation who's sitting, behind a computer working in central office. It's going to be an educator that says, hey, wait a second, I'm really passionate about this. I see an opportunity in this city. And we really think this combination of a diverse array of options is exciting. And so, yes, it makes it easier for people when they hear Baton Rouge today. I mean, 10 years ago, we got laughed out of rooms. They're like, I think that's the capital. I know New Orleans, but where are you? And today people return our phone calls. And frankly, we've got more schools wanting to come to Baton Rouge than maybe we think we even have space for, which is a good problem to have because, unfortunately, we still have about 170,000 kids in Louisiana that are in struggling schools. And so we've begun to talk to people about, well, there's other parts of the state you might want to look at. And we've collaborated with, some other community leaders across the state to say, hey, maybe you ought to start organizing some opportunities for new schools to be started in your community. I mean, parents, and so this is the other side of this. I mean, parents, especially after COVID, I mean, we all became teachers. And it is entirely frustrating with especially a family that doesn't have resources or the ability to move, to be told there's only one option for your kid is like, that's not working anymore. I mean, that genie is out of the bottle in terms of parents that are feeling like, I want something better for my kid and I'm going to go find it. And so I do feel like we've seen that snowball on the community embracing charter schools and demanding it more. I mean, Brandon, every one of our schools we work with has a wait list of some size, some bigger than others. I mean, we've got Basis has a wait list above the thousands of, more than 1,000 families that want to be in that school and can't because there's not enough seats. And so, you start to do that and see this, that like families are going to keep driving the creation of new things. And I think there's a lot of options on the horizon that are really exciting, learning pods and charter schools and, private school choice. So I think we're in a new age that if government leaders don't catch up to parents, like they're already going to pass you by. And I think we feel really bullish on the idea that if we keep attracting high quality schools here, parents are going to demand them and find a lot of success in them.
Yeah, I've been a big advocate for, I shouldn't say like advocate is probably the wrong word. I'm not out, marching around and, beating my chest, but I've always said, the school system and the way it's not school system. I mean, this from private to public to charter, like we got to change the way we're doing some of this stuff, like the fact that like the number one thing, according to the way we educate a child, is like they're born on date. Like to me, just kind of messes with my head. It's like, so that's the most important factor is when they were born. Has nothing to do with ability or interest or anything. Like we need to change this. Like, why is no one, it just seems so obvious to me. Like I got a kid who's just crushing it in science and loves science. It's like, let's feed that little guy some science and see what he can do with it. Why am I beating him over the head with, commas and semicolons in English? Not saying he doesn't need to know it, but like usually like in the business world, right? You find somebody who's really good at something and you kind of feed them a little bit more and you're like, hey, what else can we do here?
Yeah.
I feel like education somehow misses that sometimes, a lot of times.
You're right. I mean, and even worse, I mean, for children that grow up in poverty, I mean, I was the first in my family to go to college and it's because I got to go to a really, or at least I ascribe it to, I got to go to a really awesome high school It was a selective enrollment magnet. All of my other friends went to our neighborhood high school, district zoned high school. And, none of those friends had the same classes or the type of teachers, or frankly, just this atmosphere where everyone was saying, you can go to college. And in fact, not you can go, like the expectation is you're going to go. And this isn't a defense of college for all, but it is I think our education system also puts certain kids on tracks that if they don't come to school ready to learn, they're not going to do much with them. And again, I understand there's a lot of factors that influence a child's ability to learn and grow, but I do believe in the power of schools to confront challenges kids may come with and see growth in them, see the unlocking of potential and opportunity. And again, I'm looking for schools that don't just kind of make a year's worth of progress that we would expect a normal school, a normal student to make. I want schools that are accelerating student learning and unlocking their interests. And we have found schools that do that. Whereas most traditional schools in America, not just in Baton Rouge, but most traditional urban schools don't accelerate kids. They sort of keep them where they are and don't respond to their unique needs. And so I think what we're actually doing now in Baton Rouge is not just with the individual schools that is changing a child's life, but it's the accumulation of these schools, 10,000 students and growing, that you're going to see opportunity unlocked for families that have not had that. And I don't know what disruption that creates kind of in our city, but I know it can only be good because we were not in our school system, especially for Black and brown students, we were not getting outcomes that should be acceptable to anyone. And we got to change that. I mean, when you've got 90% of kids in North Baton Rouge having no option but a failing school, you can't tell me that means, that 90% of those kids are failures. Like that cannot be the result.
And, it's funny, it's not an analogy I tend to speak, and I'm going to get this study. The percentage is wrong. Somebody's going to email me and tell me I'm a horrible person, so I can't remember. It's sad, but it's if you go into, there was a group that went and did a study of professional sports. And it was just this overwhelming, I don't remember exactly how it fell, but like their birthdays were like 40% of them were almost within this same like 2 or 3 months. And they went through and found and started doing this research. It was because of the cutoff, the school cutoff. So they were like a little bit bigger and they were a little bit older.
Yeah.
I can't remember who did it. You've heard this where they go through and they studied it all the way through. They were like, well, because the guy, it's not that he just was a little bit bigger than the other kids. And the coaches were like, well, this kid's awesome. So they lean in and invest a little bit more in time, with the kids. And then the next coach does the same thing. It happens over and over and over again. And I just found that it was amazing. And I kind of equate that to where you're saying, it's like when that teacher just takes that interest, or, when the school can just jump in there and go, hey, you're going to make it, or you're going to get through here. Kind of, you said, you're going to, the expectation is you're going to go to college, or you're going to go to a trade school. You're not just in daycare, we're moving you through a system.
That's right. Yeah. And look, again, I'm not trying to pick on like large traditional urban school systems, but if you're managing a school system for 50,000 kids, I get why it's a lot easier for you as a superintendent or a central office, bureaucrat to sort of say, well, every school is going to be on, the agrarian calendar. They're all going to start at 8 a.m. The buses are going to come on this time. Everyone's going to get the same dosage of math, same dosage of English, because we have to organize across, 100 schools. It's a lot different if you're running one school and you get to wake up every day and say, okay, I've got 400 scholars in my school. What do they need? And it may be that the kids in this school need, this aviation idea. That's the hook. Or they need year-round school. Or guess what? We're going to go from 7 to 5 every day, and we're going to feed them dinner. I don't know, but I think, what's going to have to change in education is that you're going to need to push resources and decision-making closer to where the kids are. We don't need a monolithic school board or a single superintendent in a Maoist style, like dictating how the country is going to work. Like, no, we need them to set clear rules and outcome expectations, but let's free up our educators and give them the resources to actually meet the needs of the kids in their school. because neighborhoods across Baton Rouge are going to need very different things based on where their kids show up. And that's what charter schools do is again, the real secret sauce here. And it's not that secret, is that families get to pick the school, and then the educators get to pick working in that school. So you've got to believe they've all aligned on some kind of common mission and vision about why they chose to come together. And then they're held accountable for getting results with the kids that we should all expect. Are they literate? Are they numerate? Do they have the ability to compete and have a successful career and not become a high school dropout and not, end up in our prison system? And those are the outcomes we've just got to flip in this city. And I hope that our accumulated effort will create that kind of disruption, that positive transformation for the community.
Yeah, you said you were talking about, the different schools and it just popped in my head. It's like, think as many industrial, Baton Rouge, everybody, in this city, everybody knows somebody that works at the plant or is in the plant. It's like, why don't we have a school that kind of works some of those schedules to make that a little bit easier? Like that'd make it a lot easier for people, there we go. So
design schools for families and students
that we have that are, walking into Exxon or Shell. It's what we say, right, in business, go meet the customer where they are. Don't make them come to you. We've got to do things a little bit different. I remember it's the reason we started Kid Scoop News is we started putting it out because somebody was explaining to me that third grade reading levels are where they take the starting number and then they run the math to figure out how many prison beds, that they're going to need. And it just blew me away that how important literacy was, at that point. And sometimes we miss the mark. I think the same person told me, they were like, look, up until third grade, we learn to read. And then from third grade on, we read to learn. And if you fall behind every year, it makes it that much worse. And so we need educators that are going to spot that and say, wait, we've got a problem. Yeah. How can I help? Right here, this is the problem.
It's exactly right.
How do people find out?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can find out more about us, newschoolsbr.org. That's where we're located, but we're really not that important. I think what's actually important is finding out about the new school options that are available. We created in partnership with the state, a enrollment platform, enrollbr.org, which is a one-stop application site. It's a common application. So for those familiar with, kind of a common application for college, you can apply to multiple schools with one application. You don't have to fill out, if you want to apply to 8 schools, you don't have to fill out 8 different ones. You don't have to drive all over the city or jump through hoops or get the secret handshake. I mean, you apply once and you can learn about all the schools there. Now, Brandon, I'll tell you, my hope for the city is that we could get to a place where at least all public schools were on the same application timeline and process. We make it so hard for families to navigate all the different application windows and processes that I would love if we could just put in one place, whether that's EnrollBR or something else. It doesn't matter to me, but we make it hard for families to find their way to school options. And that's one of the things we want to change is we really want to democratize school choice so that every family knows of their options and can access them.
That's, well, in the simplest form, it's like I told somebody the other day, I don't, as a parent and also publisher of, parenting magazines, it's even hard sometimes where I'm like, when do I enroll my kids in soccer? Like, when does that happen? Like, when is that, and that's not even the real decisions, right? There's so many other things that it seems like we could use a simpler way of doing all this. So, man, I appreciate you taking some time, to talk to me. Love to have you back, kind of hear what's going on. Yeah,
I'd love that.
That's where we've all got to be, right?
That's
Too
right.
many people don't think that way, I think, these days.
Appreciate it, Brandon.
Well, I tell everybody you got more important things to do than sit around and talk to me all day. So let me know what I can do to help, and we shall be in touch soon.
Sounds great.